Hello and welcome to another Wednesday. We're in the month of September now. There's not much of 2022 left. All right, so panic aside, I hope you all are having a wonderful week so far. We've certainly been busy in here. We've decided, some things we want to record in the future, which has kept Flo very, very busy. How are you doing, Miss Flo?
Busy.
Yeah.
Good, but busy. Very busy.
Actually, you started a challenge for yourself, right?
Yes. I am seeing just how many models I can get painted before Valhalla hits. I am currently at 40, I believe.
40 models you've already completed?
Yes.
And in the last, 10 days, week?
Let's see, it's 32 days left, so
Last
about
2 weeks?
12
days. That is insane. All right, well, Flo's also very fast at what she does. So hello to everybody in the chat. Chucka Rhubarb, hi. Paul, thank you as always for being here. Achilles Rain, welcome. Thomas, welcome. J. Alex, good to see you, man. Mr. Coutinho, hello. The Plunder Den, good to see you. I've been following your Instagram posts. Hi, Melinda. So yeah, tonight's topic. We were thinking on it last night, and of course, there's all the Mark IV stuff that's coming out for War Machine, and new stuff. They just had the recent Prime cast, which I'm still getting through, but they were kind of like clarifying some things. But it's interesting, right? Because there is this phrase that I've been hearing, and hang on, let me not misquote my own quote here, but it's like, do wargamers hate change? And the quote I was hearing is, there are two things wargamers hate: the way things are and change. So I kind of wanted to deep dive that with you guys, as we're all wargamers here, and what your thoughts are on that. Because if that is true, then why? And how true is it? Because again, there's examples of games like BattleTech that doesn't see much change at all for decades. And then there's ones that obviously see a lot more change, either live rule set changes, or you have like the big additions, 40K, where they'll change additions, but then they do this whole codex laddering, and then new edition codex laddering, and all of that. So yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to start. We've got 3 people actually who will probably participate. Well, Flo will be busy painting, but you're welcome to participate.
What are people working on tonight?
We should definitely ask that. Yes, what are you all working on tonight? We will be doing progress checks tonight. See how busy you guys are staying. Dave Dog, welcome. I love change. I love buying codices of all my Warhammer 40K armies every 3 years. More so love buying battle tomes for the new edition of Age of Sigmar for the same period. I'm not allowed near sharp pencils. Oh, Mark IV. Hello, Todd. Eric, welcome. Change for change is bad. Okay, that's a fair point. J. Alex. Oh, yes, hi. Let's see, not so sure if I hate changes. I can always play the older versions with my pals, I guess. That's definitely always said, but it's a lot easier said than done, because you have to get all those other people on board, right? Dave, I so adore getting 98 pounds out of my wallet and putting it on the counter for a new edition rulebook of Kill Team and Warcry. I take my medicine every night also. Bless your heart. Let's see, Paula was working on Max Payne 3. Oh yeah, he's been so in on it. Which
I've noticed.
Yeah, well, and we were up late the other night. Like, I was watching him play Mortuary Assistant, which it's no Phasmo, I have to conclude. Even though I was screaming my head off, like, watching stuff, it's still just all jump scares. It's like a haunted house simulator more than like a ghost simulator. But I digress. Tonight painting Scorn Infantry, Praetorian Carax. Nice. Thomas painting Karchev and Deathjag. Dynamic fusion. Non-metallic metal taking forever. That's what I hear. I see lots of videos on like painting it or painting it quickly, or people saying you shouldn't do it, people saying you should do it. And I don't know why non-metallic metal became somehow controversial, but to see the way videos are named in that topic does seem like it's gotten, I don't know, people are a little fussy about it. Eric, Infinity, 0 of 12 guys. All right, you got your work cut out for you. See what you can do. Todd, painting the Rat Abomination for Rumble Slam. Need a break from purple. Don't let Paul know. So yeah, nice. I guess we are just trying to get as much stuff done. You've got lots of different armies you're working on, but I know Town.
Painting Cthulhu Wars.
Yes. So Cthulhu Wars, the board game, which is out of print, I guess at this point.
Yeah, supposedly they're wanting to print more, but they just haven't been able to. So we'll see.
Fair enough. And then Necrons and Tau and Space Marines and is that it?
Technically, I have my Harlequins to do also, but I don't know if they're going to get done at this point.
We're trying to encourage Flo to have a Harlequin army. Unfortunately, it's like not really been in the front seat of painting priority. The Plunder Den, I am working on a farmhouse painting tutorial for my next episode. Ooh. It's out of print already? Didn't it only come out like a few years ago? It's been
out for like 8 years.
Oh, 8? Time does fly.
Well, actually, it said 6 years ago that I was painting it, so it might have been 6 years, but it's still...
Okay, about 6, I guess. Let's see, I am on the computer working on a terrain map for D&D. There are so many good options now for that. I actually bought into one of the Kickstarters for Dungeon Alchemist, I want to say is what it was called, where you build like D&D maps, and it's very entertaining to make them. I have no idea how usable they are, but you have all these different tools, and it's browser based, and you can drag out like how many tiles wide you want something to be, and it's this whole animated thing that pulls out all these beautiful stone tiles, and the walls pop up, and you add furniture, and it's just like you decorating a little dollhouse. And that's literally all I've ever done with it, but super cute. Unfortunately, you can't 3D print them. Oh well. Let's see. Yeah, my first big change on Wargames on Mark IV. How was the reception on Mark III?
Not great.
Well, Mark III had some trouble, if I recall correctly. The rules got leaked. So it's not like they got to put out like a proper anticipated exciting release. Like whoever had it, leaked it, they were dicks, frankly. Whereas you watch something like, again, 40K, like, as far as I can tell, they use Secret Service level security on all of their IP-related stuff. So even though people can anticipate and speculate that there's new edition, like they never know, and then the reveal happens and it's this whole to-do. Whereas with Mark III, Mark II was kind of in a height of glory, but it was starting to stagnate, and it had a lot of power bloat. Bradigus had come out, and people were kind of upset about that. Circle caster who's just like sweeping tournaments. And so Mark III was probably a bit of a sign of relief until people saw the rules, and then it felt to a lot of people like a Mark 2.5, like just sort of a half measure of fixing some things but leaving enough alone that not enough people felt like the problems they saw in the game were being addressed. And then that's when you saw like a lot of people sort of dip out. But with Mark IV, I mean, cautious optimism seems like it's kind of the order of the day, at least in my sphere. So I'm hoping that goes well. But I even mean it from a more philosophical point. Like I brought up some bullet points to kind of consider.
I feel like there's a lot more player goodwill for Mark IV than there was for Mark III.
Yeah, I would say so. And mostly probably from former players.
Oh, yeah, true.
Let's see. I agree with Eric Defoe. Change for change's sake is bad. This is Paul. Or changing a game because the company wants to just try out what they think instead of listening to feedback of players. Eric, I quit because of Mark III. You and a whole bunch of other people, my friend. Chuckarubab. Change which improves something is great. Change which sells more books, not so much. Well, and that's sort of the big thing, right? Perception. And that's one of the things I kind of have as my little bullet points of why might somebody start off by complaining. Because I'm talking about the point where you just hear that there's a new edition and you haven't actually seen what that is yet. Like, what is that first gut reaction you get? Is it like, oh no, what are they going to do? Or, oh, I'm really curious about this. And, you know, I mentioned 40K, like the 40K new editions. I usually heard just people complaining whenever like a new edition's about to get announced. Although I've heard positive stuff too. It just always seems like it goes more toward complaining. And then specifically, like, the codex creep has been, like, the big bugaboo with 40K, right?
I remember reading a few years ago, more than a few years ago, but it was, I think it had to do with one of the changes for Dungeons & Dragons, one of the editions, but they're having to change a lot of the lore and what was going on in the world and changing some rules. And the actual phrase that they used was they needed to reset the knowledge base. And it was specifically to sell books.
Yeah.
Because so many people had their collections, and so they needed to change the game fundamentally enough that people had to go through and buy a whole new collection. And I feel like that's kind of, I think that happens more now, which I think makes players a lot
like gun shy in a way.
Gun shy, or they have a lot less faith that this is being done
in their own best interest.
Yeah,
that's a fair point. I think what you're talking about is when D&D was sold. I'm pretty sure it was when it was sold to Hasbro, and that was when fourth edition Spell Plague, I think is what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the whole world was so different, and they did that crap with World of Warcraft too. And really, even when, I don't even know what the consensus is anymore when they announce a new expansion. If people are like, what's my response anymore?
Well, it's hard, like, so obviously Age of Sigmar is probably the most notorious tabletop wargaming.
It's a bit of a quintessential example of a rough release.
And lore-wise, it's hard not to feel that's a little bit true with War Machine as well. With like the Infernals coming, then we just jump ahead a bunch of years, and suddenly a bunch of people are dead and a bunch of people aren't, and it really got a little crazy there, and that didn't feel great.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, Dave. Gotta put my quoting marks on here again. Moreover, I love big company business model strategy changes. I cannot wait to pay a subscription to digital services for D&D 1 in 2024 and throw away all my D&D 5th edition rules.
Is that real? Is that a thing?
I don't know, maybe. But in general, like the whole subscription thing, I think Windows wants you to subscribe in their new, like with Windows 11. Adobe obviously wants you to subscribe. Any of the really high-end services like 3D Studio Max want you to subscribe.
I feel like when Windows does that, I think Linux might start getting a new boost. All the Windows shells that Linux has, I swear those might be getting more popular.
Eric says, Marvel Crisis Protocol is a great example of a game that I feel is handled well. Perhaps, but it's also very new. So it has just, as far as I can tell, fresh ground. There's not a bunch of years, there's not decades of history associated with it that the player base would then maybe have reason to worry or be so attached that they're afraid of whatever that change might be.
Well, it hadn't been out long enough for it to even have had a new edition. And so we have no idea what their new editions look like how they handle it. So whereas other games, you're like, I've seen you put out new editions like 5 times already, you know?
Yeah, and D&D is kind of an interesting example of that because people still love 3.5 like more than anything, for whatever reason. Let's see here. J. Alex, the D&D map I'm making is less battle map and more terrain challenge. It's a hedge maze. I want my players to actually feel lost within it, so I'm trying software-based navigation as something new. Ooh, that sounds exciting. Yeah, I think my first gut reaction to Mark IV was absolute mind-blown enthusiasm. The only thing I actually thought was cool new models. Really? Cool new models? Okay. I get it, because there's been so many new models, and that's exciting to a point, but I don't know. I am a little fatigued on them, but on new models, It's like I just want to enjoy my old stuff. Let's see. Waffles Enjoyer, great name by the way. Wargamers hate change, and wargamers hate when things stay the same. Well, but that's a very blanket statement, right? Like you never want a sentence to sum up an entire group of people because you are then you'll always be wrong, right? But why is that a sentiment that's being echoed enough? It has some elements of truth, and I'm just wanting to explore what that I think is based in. Because as I think, Eric mentioned, like Marvel Crisis Protocol, if they were to announce another edition or an expansion, as far as I can tell, I think their player base would probably be really positive on it. I don't think there'd be a lot of digging your heels in about it. but, you
They've
know.
also not experienced it before.
Well, yeah, but
them,
if
so-
that, okay, and so, for example, and I'm not picking on them because I don't know anything about how it's ran, but say that new expansion went poorly and the release was just a disaster, and then 3 years later there's a new edition announced, are people going to be as excited? Are you mad because, oh, wargamers just don't like change, or is that based on something? And I think that's kind of what I'm driving at, because even the examples I have of 40K, War Machine, and I threw in Malifaux, because, you know, if you want to know where people are complaining on the internet, you just go to Reddit. And so there was some crying about the new edition for Malifaux, although not nearly as much. As far as I can tell, Weird has generally kept a pretty positive relationship with their audience, but still complains because they went from like MK2 to MK3. And I know when they announced that, I was really positive on it because they specifically said, oh, we're releasing this, and here are the major things we're going to clean up. The conditions are always the one I remember. Let's see.
Well, there's kind of a point you brought up, actually. I think it's a good point. I don't know if we added that. But for people who paint models slowly, I think new editions, especially ones where
Could be
models go
stressful.
away, or
Yeah.
suddenly the models you've been painting for the last few weeks or months or over the last year or two are suddenly like, yeah, these aren't very good now in the new edition. So you have a whole army full of them, and you're like, oh,
That's
man.
very true. That was, I mean, obviously that happens with 40K. That definitely happens with Malifaux because they would retire models.
Because not
And-
everyone paints like Flo.
No. You don't get 40 models behind you in 12 days. Goodness. Anyway, yes. So that's fair. Like for the folks who are maybe just super casually trying to build up their army, and that can be kind of feel like it's maybe delayed from you. Let's see, Paul, I used to be, oh, can't wait to see what they do with the new editions. Now I'm like, oh God, they're gonna mess this up. Hey, Patty. Hello, where are we at? And what are we talking about? Dude, read the description. Let's see, Paul. Oh, he's taking care of you. Let's see, we're talking about initial reactions when a new edition of any game is released. And if that's different based on if it's like huge game company or small game company, do you treat those differently or do you have kind of the same reaction?
I feel like for War Machine, when this new edition was announced, it was kind of like a, well, hopefully this brings them back from the brink, because they kind of died down. You weren't seeing them in any stores. Everything was on clearance for them. Everybody, like,
Yeah.
so many people stopped playing. So,
I know.
you know, it's like, well, hopefully the only way to go is up from here.
There is that. There's a lot of interesting videos I saw, like kind of, again, cautiously optimistic. People trying to take a very clinical approach to what that would look like, because the gamescape is different than it was 10 years ago.
There it is.
Okay, good. I don't know what happened, guys. Computers being computers. Sorry. Let's see. I heard the old cast models are no longer going to be usable in Mark IV. Is that true? My understanding is that is not true. They will be usable, but with a caveat. that some of them will be usable in Mark IV. Everything will fall under the Mark IV rules, I think, but only some of them will be used in like the prime current play, and then everything else goes to legacy play, which is like a different rule set where there's no promise of balance of any sort. So it's more of the Wild West, but technically that's how they're saying you can still play with all your old stuff. Dave, I think the worst one was X-Wing 2.0 by Fantasy Flight. They almost killed a big tournament scene with that one. Well, see, and that was one of the things I had is like what are the reasons you have for complaining about maybe a new edition, and one of them was timing. Say you are about to go into a tournament, and they're like, by the way, new edition, here you go. Tobias, I just don't like it because it's stuck in the Marvel universe, and that universe died with Tony Stark. I guess on Marvel Crisis. See, Max Payne, I think some of this sentiment comes from each new edition. For most war games come with new models. This means more money to buy models and the new meta and more painting the new models. Now, that's a bit of a mixed bag, right? Because on the one hand, you've got to recognize that a game company needs to survive, a wargaming company survives on models. Like, it needs to sell models and rules and maintain that whole setup. And that's just going to cost what it costs. So as nice as it would be to just have models that you've gotten and had for 20 years and never changed, Battletech, like, that doesn't really work for everybody. But the benefit to game companies that perhaps is under-considered is that wargamers consume pretty voraciously. And so, you know, how many kits of generic Space Marines do you buy? If you just have generic kits, I think you'll always find people willing to buy more and more stuff. Or different armies even.
Yeah, wargamers are consumers by nature, I think.
And so in a way, it's a easy-ish market, but you've got to take care to make sure that your player base doesn't actually feel like they're being exploited. Again, resetting the knowledge base, dumping all the lore and saying, oh, well, I guess you'll just have to start over again. Like, that is a whole feels bad everything to that. And so I assume most game companies are aware of that and try to avoid that. But it's, you know, it can be choppy waters. Let's see, Todd, that's what I was worried about. That's what I was worried about with Mark IV. My Grimkin still have a way to go, and suddenly everything's going to be useless. They did say all of Grimkin are going to be usable in Mark IV, though. So
they said all of the, like, Grimkin and
all the limited factions.
Yeah, the limited factions.
Yeah, so Grimkin, Infernals, and Crucible Guard. Probably missing others, but
the Art Deco guys.
Oh yeah, the Convergence of Cirrus. Yeah. Convergence. Anyway, yes. So they're all coming back. As much as I detest Infernals, they'll be there. See, I can't stand that some people think that these models are an investment, and they're not their toys. They're not their toys.
Investment as opposed to toys.
Yeah, I mean, you always get that, like, whatever. Enjoy your product the way you want to enjoy it. Just as long as you're not telling other people how to enjoy their stuff, then I generally don't care. And maybe they are, because sometimes at some point there's going to be a collector's item out.
Well, one of the things that it is an investment in a hobby environment, I think, because it's an investment of your time to assemble it and paint it, and you know what I mean? I mean, the purchase is money that you spend, and you spend money on entertainment, but the time you put into getting it looking nice on the tabletop, that's a bit of an investment, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. But that's it's the buy-in, like that's the buy-in you need from your players to keep them going. I mean, and I've mentioned this many times on stream and in interviews, but there's 3 huge elements to a war game that keeps it alive. The models are a huge part of it, like the game, the hobbying part of it, again, the models, and then the lore. And generally, you want your player to be able to bounce around any of those 3 aspects to stay invested in the world. So if your players don't care at all about the lore and they're not really hobbyists, then as soon as they get a little bit burned out of the game, they're going to disappear. So that's like always a problem.
Yeah, I guess it's one of the things that keeps 40K afloat. Is there are players who'll step out, like if a new edition comes out they don't really care about, they'll step out for like 5 years, but they'll still keep buying books to read, and they'll
keep their armies, or keep buying models, or keep playing the video games.
Keep buying White Dwarfs every now and again.
He's talking about himself. Patrick, war games are played for competitive reasons, and edition changes can mess up why you like playing those games. Do you think war games are always inherently competitive? I guess I don't know. I think they kind of are.
In a sense. They're
Yeah.
not always inherently tournament games.
True.
But you are, as a war game, you are fighting.
Your
defeat
wits
your opponent.
against someone else's wits. Someone wins, someone loses. And that is the nature of that game.
It's the nature of most games.
Yeah, I mean, cooperative play has gotten really, really big, especially in the board game scene. And then Adam's new game.
Well, Adam's game, solo play, cooperative play, and adversarial play.
Yeah, no, he's got all the bases covered.
Which is
He
smart.
was very smart. So, let's see. Jerry, I'll never play 40K again. Codex creep. I went from losing a game due to points to being tabled by turn 2 at 40K. That I couldn't keep up with the high cost of new rule books. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that. But let me ask you this. Do you play any of the video games for 40K? Because it has a really strong aesthetic, right? Like, it does draw you in, you know, their super original aesthetic that they haven't copied from anyone else ever. But it drags you in. And it's a really cool looking one. So, like, I'm super excited about Darktide at the end of this year. Like, I'm going to be all in on that game. So, yeah. But it keeps you in the world without necessarily keeping you in that game, I guess. Paul, they'll see this in a sec. Hopefully, yes, thank you. D&D was the same. New books every 2 years. Yeah, and I think a game company probably needs to be careful about. They can't just have the only reason being like, well, we need to make money, guys, because we were like, well, this is a voluntary interaction, guys. So better give me something I want too.
Well, I mean, I feel like in a lot of these, you make money by introducing new players to your game, not just constantly fleecing your existing players.
Depends on the game company, I guess. But yes, I think that's generally true. People have to actually enjoy it. It's the game. It's something you're doing for fun. It's your hobby. It's either something you do to relax, something you do to focus, something that brings some part of you joy, even if it's just to complain about it, which is a thing. So, you know. But it's always voluntary, and that's something that is really important to remember. Let's see, Jerry, but weren't the extra D&D rulebooks just like more detail or extra spells in addition to the core rules and not essential? Huh.
Not always.
Bolt action is quite fun. The Warlord guys have done a really good job. I think they are very...
The article I was reading about was they were making fundamental changes to the world. So your old knowledge in D&D was just useless knowledge. Like, it was something that those things you used to know just weren't relevant anymore.
Yeah.
That's the article I was reading specifically.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's no bueno. Let's see, what else have we got? Not all change is good or welcome. Also, hello, Palpador. Yes, not all change is welcome or good, and some change is necessary. So my only question is, as a general rule, does that phrase, wargamers hate two things, the way things are and change, does that really apply? And is that a fair thing to say about wargamers? And does it apply across the spectrum? So, I mean, I think it's fairly easy to say that, no, not everybody feels that way. And if that is a response, it's usually because of something, because of the history of the game company, because of, let's see, I wrote down the options. The type of meta that the group hearing it is, if they're, you know, really into their hyper-competitive models and they've got their list just so, and now things are going to change, if that upsets them. Or conversely, if they're super casual and they've been painting their army forever and they're getting ready to play and now something can't be usable anymore. The timing of a release, if it was like right before a tournament. And for those content creators out there, if you have, you know, better reports of games and you're like, oh, that's not around anymore, I guess that's not good anymore. Which is fine if you don't take forever to put those videos out. But anyway, digressing. Let's get back to some of the comments here. Let's see, Dave Dog. Oh, yes, talking about Bolt Action. It's a good World War II game. from some X Games Workshop guys. Some say it's better than Warhammer 40K. It's like an older edition of 40K, isn't it? Bolt action?
Yeah, and it is one of the guys, I want to say it's Jervis. But either way, I don't know, but has Bolt Action had new editions that have come out, or have they stuck with the original rule set?
I don't know. I don't know how long it's been out.
It's since I think I played a demo game of it, like they had a whole table and everything. I think in 2013 at Adepticon. So it's been a little while.
Okay. Although if you've got a really sweet rule set, you probably can coast for a pretty long time on it. But again, like, I don't know if that's like, we talked about codexes the other day and the difference between like putting out a rule book that's just for a given faction, like a piecemeal release of a new edition, versus just a whole blanket new release. Because the investment from the players is different, right? And for 40K, players complain about codex creep, but they're going to want the new edition because they know that it's going to be better than what everyone else has right now, generally, unless you play Sisters. And that alone, like, kind of keeps that game kind of going in a weird, like, probably not healthy way, but a way.
Well, it seems like the new editions of 40K are almost less impactful than the new codexes. And so, like, you can put out a new edition without much blowback from the player base because everybody's just waiting for, well, we'll see what we think of the new edition when my new codex comes out.
Yeah. Tao, do you think do you guys think there will be any eventual balance on Unlimited Arena? No. I think that the only hope that Unlimited Arena would have for any hope of balance would be if the fans made a version of the game based on it, like a quasi-brawl machine or something like that with blacklisted models or specific scenarios or something like that. Is it possible? Probably, but I don't see any reason. Like, I don't know that Privateer is going to want to put any resources toward making balanced rules for models they're not making anymore, is kind of the bottom line there. Let's see. But yes, promo to Bolt Action. It's quite good. It's quite fun. I really like the way you deploy, or not the deploy your armies, but the way the turn counter works, because instead of just all your units going and all the other ones going, like the I go, you go setup, or even alternating activations, you have a colored die for each one of your units that all go into a bag, and then the players just take turns pulling a die out of the bag, and whatever color that is, that's the player that gets to select a unit to go. So there's a certain randomness, which even feels a little bit more warlike and really, really changes up how the strategy can play. So I thought that was a brilliant, brilliant design. Patrick, everything will have Mark IV rules. Then they're unlimited in Prime, with Prime having carefully curated list of old models. All conversions of Cirrus, Grimkin, Infernals, and Crucibles should be Prime. Yes. Paul, I think all 40K players just irk when a new codex is released. They know the stats will be way overpowered. The chasers will switch when those stats are balanced 3 months later. There's the book, and then there's the FAQ, which is a little bit annoying, but yes. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in glorifying Nazis. Pretty sure Bolt Action doesn't do that. Let's see, Andrew, I bought $1,500 of old Warhammer Hordes models a month ago. Now the wife wants another baby.
See, now you have leverage.
Yeah,
you can strike a deal with her.
Let's see. I just don't think Games Workshop is the only Wargames company. Yeah. Well, and there's so many. I mean, you've got, obviously, the GW is just the biggest, period. But then you've got, like, everyone else, and that includes Privateer, and that includes Weird, and that includes Corvus Belli. And then you've got, like, Marvel Crisis Protocol, and you've got
Star Wars Legion.
Star Wars
Legion
is
a strong competitor to them right now.
That's to 40K?
Yeah, competitor to 40K.
Oh, okay. Well, can't go wrong with Star Wars, I guess. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many options now, but they're all gonna have their cost. Menoth, minis are an investment in happiness. Yeah, I would say so. And I think that's kind of part of what even fuels some of those complaints, right? Because you have this investment in something you really enjoy. Complaints usually come from people who are invested in your game, and as annoying as it can be, I would argue that it's probably better for players to be active in the game community, even if they're complaining about it, than to have the player base disappear. Like, they don't complain, they just go away. Like, that is so much worse for a game, because you get no feedback, you get nothing you can respond to, and that obviously shows you that those players are no longer invested, and getting them back is way harder than putting out something new for the people to either keep complaining about or make some of them happy with.
Well, what is it? The people think hate is the opposite of love, but really indifference is the opposite.
Yeah.
And so even if you're upset at a war game, at least you're engaged in it and you're looking for it to get better instead of just walking away and not caring anymore.
Yes. Dave, I kind of know what you mean. I left a gaming club in Madrid because there was this really old 65-year-old General Franco supporter who bullied people he didn't like the look of. Man, it takes all kinds. Or, I don't know if it takes all kinds, but surely there always is all kinds.
But all kinds sure do show up.
They sure do show up. What bugs me about Warhammer Horde's new edition are primarily three things. Oh, Patty's gonna lay it out for us. Let's see, Dave. That's what I'm saying. I ain't watching a World War II movie. And 40K has such good lore. I think Warhammer Hordes did a nice job moving the story forward. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings on that, but time will tell, I guess, on that. 40K has so much lore because, frankly, a lot of it's trash. But some of it's really good, and you've got like things like Gaunt's Ghosts and things that people are just like, this is so amazing, and those are the ones that are remembered. What are there, hundreds of books in the Black Library at this point? Just didn't like, what is it, Ed Wood? Like, worst thing you ever read? Next one will be better. Like, there's just so much of it. People find something they like, and it really helps to stick. So, that helps a lot. I really hope that Warhammer Hordes like lore becomes way, way, way more accessible to people, because there's a lot of really, really cool stuff, especially like the early world stuff. The formation of like Cain, the origination of the Grimkin, where humanity came from, where the elven gods came, or how the Iosians came to being, the relationship between the Iosians and the Scorn. Like, there's so much cool and interesting lore in there that really takes a new spin on generic fantasy too.
Well, there's just enough like actual like kind of political movement in between the Iron Kingdoms factions that it makes them kind of feel real and a little more rendered as well, even though those like sort of political things aren't even the main drivers of the overall story of Cain,
Yeah, well,
like the politics of, what was it, Ein Vanar having to marry or choosing to marry Vlad so that the Umbrians in the newly captured Lael would like fold into Khador a little more easily, and you're like, okay, that seems realistic.
Bringing Julius Railthorn back.
Oh yeah,
like re-kinging him. That was actually a really good book.
Like those things are small enough, but really interesting, even though they're not the main big story. And you're like, oh, okay, well that really kind of renders the world instead of just these huge broad strokes.
Yes. Yes, for sure. So I agree with that. But also you had mentioned one of the interesting things about Warhammer Hordes as an aesthetic, I say Warhammer Hordes, it's just War Machine now, I guess, is the idea of civilization versus the wilds, and how diametrically different they are, where it doesn't take much to just fall into, just become a sacrifice of some Gatorman tribe just because you were out on the Black Tongue River too long or whatever. Like, it's Dragon's Tongue River too long. It's way, way, way dangerous. And you sort of like barely reached a certain level of civilization where, no, there's cities and there's a certain degree of technology and comfort, but you're just right next door to pure chaos. It's really fun. Patty, the slow roll of new stuff. Oh yes, of the three potential issues. The slow roll of new stuff, I feel like the launch was lackluster. More boxes should be available already. It would make it feel real. I guess, because in my last interview, I was thinking that it's launching at the end of October, but I guess it's launching at the beginning of the new year. So there's time to make that work. I'm sure they would love to have more models and stuff out, but people always assume that, or I think people currently assume that Privateer is a much, much bigger company than it really is, maybe. Because I'm under the assumption, I guess, that they're just coming out with the things they know they can stock, they don't want to overpromise, because the risk of wanting to put out way more stuff is then overpromising, and then that's another way that people complain. Either you don't have enough stuff, or you're saying we're getting stuff, but we've been waiting 6 months, and you're choosing who you're upsetting. Let's see, Todd, it seems like people really approach war games like they would pick up basketball or something. I'm not sure what you mean.
I mean, I can go buy a basketball for $20 and then I'm set. You know what I mean? Whereas to get into a war game, that's a lot of investment of time and learning and money, and so it's not the same as like just picking up, oh, I'm gonna go start playing basketball. You know, I'm gonna go down to the local, little court and buy a basketball and go out and just see if I can get pickup games. It is a lot more of an investment, so it's not as, you don't casually wander into it as easily.
Okay. Well, I couldn't tell if that comment was more of like you're very casually picking it up, because there are cheap war games you could play. You could play Frostgrave, like for pretty cheap. I think the rulebook's like $20.
You can. There are some things you can do, but then if you're playing it, you have to. It's easier to just find a 40K group, whereas now you're looking for a more specialized game. Yeah. I don't know. The idea is he was just saying that it's people rarely do that, and it's like I think that's why though, is it does. I mean, even playing Malifaux or Frostgrave is still a lot more investment of like money and time than just buying a basketball.
The second you have to paint your own model, it's already way more of an investment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. That's why like X-Wing had a relatively low initial investment, because even though the models would cost whatever they did, they were already painted. You're like, woohoo! I mean, and they were not badly painted. They were like, it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad. All right, before I read the rest of the comments, I think we should do a progress check. There's a whole glob of green here on our turntable of whatever spoopy horrors there are. It's clearly Cthulhu's faction, but
Shoggoths and cultists.
Is that a Shoggoth? Okay. Little cultist dudes looking spoopy.
Now we have deep ones.
Deep ones.
Oh, those are the deep one models?
They are deep ones. Can you see them?
I always think of them as standing up a little more humanoid. It's interesting to see them like that. So many interpretations of them, right?
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Down just a little bit. Now we have to adjust the focus. I don't know if it's focusing.
So you really just have a few colors on there. It's black, green, and then white pages, red lips, red eyes. I guess their arms. Okay. Looking good. They're looking good. Let's be honest, they are cultists. Those green painted models, that's true. They are cultists. Oh, man. And these are, what are these?
Star Spawn. I just started them.
Okay, so she's starting on the Star Spawn now. Miranda, I thought you CIA busted all the cultists. Man, there's always more cultists. You break into one person's garage and stop a ritual, but there's like 5 more rituals happening in town. It's basically a never-ending fight to stop the apocalypse.
There's like 2 more just down the street.
Yeah. It's like cultists and meth houses like compete for.
Maybe they're the same.
Big problems in the Midwest, Paul, I think these days cost becoming a larger and larger factor. I always say everyone has a limit to where that model is so cool it becomes, I ain't paying that much for that chunk of plastic. That's fair. And with more options now being available, and by that I mean 3D printing, yeah, then I do wonder where that tolerance shifts to. Because you have people who are like, nope, I love Games Workshop models, and to their credit, they make some beautiful, beautiful models. But a lot of companies make beautiful, beautiful models now. And, I know you've done that company that you subscribe to that gets them. You can
Loot Studios.
There you go. Where you just have a bunch of models you can download and print. And they're all beautiful too. So it's like, that's part of those 3 elements of a war game, right? Because you want people to still be invested in your war game because you like that lore and you like that character and you want to support that company. Let's see, price of entry. I think it's a reasonable price per model, but it's a lot of moolah these days all at once. I mean, if the price doesn't change by the end of the year, it's not going to feel like that much money for a new model, for a new army, frankly. $200, like, 10 years ago would have blown me away. There's just no way. And anymore, I'm like, God, what am I even spending at the grocery store these days? It's sickening. So I kind of wonder if they sort of future-proofed the cost of their boxes in a way. And so what feels pinchy now kind of won't soon, which is a testament to a whole bunch of other problems. But, oh hem. Tobias, I really like 40K lore in the video games. I just don't get, and I don't own a single model from the 40K universe. Yep. But you're still like, keep it alive, you know what it is. People know what Warhammer is, they've heard of it, even if they've never played the game. It's just such a far-reaching lore, and I think hugely because of video games. Which I would put in sort of the lore category of those three things. Even though you're playing the video games, you're not necessarily supporting a war game, you're just supporting an intellectual property at that point. Patrick, lastly, no promise of dedicated skirmish game, which could help with the buy-in. I'm concerned about the Shadespire feel to buying new armies. The Shadespire feel. Huh. So I know for the Shadespire stuff I've played, I've very much limited. Like, we collected a bunch of little armies and we're like, we just played this level, but there's like so little thought put into playing those games, which made them very fun, by the way. But.
To be fair, though, if you get into Shadespire, that's the Warhammer Underworlds, right? Shadespire?
Yes.
Then you're playing a board game and you're just picking up stuff, but then after you've picked up an edition or two of it, you start looking around and you go, oh, I could probably play Warcry or
Age of Sigmar.
Because I already kind of have a couple of these and I already kind of painted and I like this. Like,
and they're the same
he's
kind of
right.
models.
I agree with him 100% on that one. I know Company of Iron was not so successful.
Company of Iron would do so well to be rebranded, 100%. Like,
well, and rethought.
Rethought for sure.
Because it should be a game that plays in like 30 minutes. You know what I mean? And that's for like, you should be able to teach a new person how to play the game in that,
Which I suspect is what Riot Quest was kind of an answer to. But Company of Iron...
Riot Quest didn't feel like the world, though.
No, it was...
Whereas you look at Kill Team, you're like, yep, I'm playing 40K just on a squad level. Whereas Company of Iron also kind of felt like that. It just took way too long. They put in so many clunky rules in that thing, but then...
But the initial core rules weren't too bad. The clunkiness did come from it being really difficult to kill a model. I love the fact that there are no warcasters in there.
Yes.
It started suffering from bloat. You could only get the rules from magazines. Like, there were problems with that for sure. But Company of Iron would be a great candidate to have come back out of, here's a $100 board game that has a bunch of models in it, and they're also usable in War Machine. And now you spend $50 or whatever to help fill out an army, and then you can start playing War Machine. That seems appropriate. That seems to be exactly what Warcry did.
If they were really sharp about it, they would do it almost like a cross between, Undercity?
Okay.
The Iron Kingdoms board game. Cross between that and almost like the way Shadespire is, but where you're collecting these armies and learning about the lore, but it'd be real smart to do a cooperative version.
Mm-hmm.
Because
War Machine had
goes a long way.
Any sort of cooperative option, which you get with Undercity, but people just crapped all over Undercity because they're like, oh, these tiles are ugly. It's like, it's literally one of their best games. Like, but there you go. Like, nobody was willing to hear it. So just give it a different name, make colored tiles, I guess, and then put it back out, and everyone will love it, I guess. I don't know.
See, if they were real quick on the draw, they'd have printed up new cardboard tile packs that were an expansion to the board game. And then they could have made additional money from it and also kind of solved a problem that a lot of people didn't like, all in one kind of quick, swift solution.
That's true. That's done. I think what Warmahordes is super necessary. It got to the collapse point we all anticipated. Anticipated, yes, but it was not inevitable, arguably. One of the big problems, and that's one of the things that was talked about in that very, very long article about the model bloat. the model bloat was a choice. That was not ever a necessity or an inevitability. And it was probably a bit of a stopgap that then got out of hand. And then, yes, a new edition
Well, they
became
were
necessary.
constantly chasing new release sales.
Yeah, well,
Just
new
over and
models
over again.
because we were going to buy new models, especially if they look cool. And I mean, heck, I'm on board with the mini crate. Like, I like them. They look really fun.
Well, mini crate's different because they're exclusive. Like, once that run is over, they destroy the molds and it's done.
It's done,
They're not
yeah.
trying to stock the shelves with it. It's just an alternative model you can use
Yes.
instead of just adding more and more and more to the lineup of models that you can put on a table.
But it does make me remember, because one of the things that gets held against War Machine, and will be for years and years and years, is just, you promised we'd always be able to use these models. You promised. And it's like, never make promises to your audience like that, I think.
I kind of don't blame them. They didn't. It wouldn't even still be a problem now, but they were just the model bloat. What was it, over 2,000 models or something like that? They eventually had, which is crazy.
2,000 models, yeah. Let's see, the models are super gorgeous. What game? Well, that's usually what you want coming into a game store, right? Walking in, and you're like, oh, these look super cool. I don't know, Imperial Knights or Colossals, like when they're painted, look really cool. Dave, if I was CEO of Games Workshop, I would uncut my sewed-up wallet where I don't pay for advertising and make Warhammer Plus free for everyone. And then you'd promptly be fired by all of the shareholders. Appreciate your sentiment. Let's see, Menath. Patrick, at the risk of sounding inflammatory, D&D sucks. I've been playing that game for 22 years and running sessions for it for almost as long. Several editions later, I don't think the creators' hearts are in it anymore.
I think Minoff John's asking about closed models.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that. Models are super gorgeous. What game? This is Cthulhu Wars. Sorry about that, John. Yes, we're painting it, which is a board game, but it's a really fun board game.
It is. It is very fun. It's one of my favorites.
And you're currently painting up the Cthulhu faction, hence
Yes.
the entire green theme going on. D&D has become so mainstream that it won't do it any favors to make massive changes at this point. Like, they're just, it's kind of gone.
It is what it is.
It's become a Paragon game at this point. So the only competition would be just from other different games. And then people will find, it's big, it's broad enough that I think people can find what they want in it, I think. I don't end up playing very much of that. Like, as much as I like to think I like RPGs, there is just something really fun about fighting someone else. I don't know.
Well, the other thing with RPGs is it's just a small handful, and you guys can all go, what edition do we want to play? There's a new edition out, I don't care. Do we want to play this? That's fine. Whereas with a war game, you have to show up at the game store and everyone,
Else
the
has to show up?
strangers, yeah, like people, you know what I mean? It's not like you're just part of a little 5-6 player group. You're actually going to the game store and you're like, all right, guys, do we all want to agree to play 4th Ed 40K? And people are like, I don't own any of those codexes. And,
Yes.
you know, it's a little different dynamic, I think. So it's a little harder.
That
Whereas
is.
for RPGs, they can put out new editions and no one has to care.
What
you
did
know?
we see at the game store the other day? People were playing Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know if that's even on a new edition. I don't even know if that game's still technically supported, but people were playing it and having a great time.
I've seen like boxes of that like in the last few years.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's still out. It was kind of funny because it was being DM'd. It was being DM'd by a cop. And the guy's like, "You seem familiar. Have I arrested you before?" I was like,
Well, it was a cop
used to
who
be-
was still in uniform.
he was still in uniform. Which I made a joke about him making people play Vampire the Masquerade as part of their probation. But he apparently was formerly a War Machine player, so that was hilarious. And no, I have not been arrested before. Thank you.
So far.
I managed to stay out of trouble for the most part. Menath, John, it's absolutely fair in the perception. It's absolutely inaccurate at the individual level. Salt sells and loud voices care. Yeah, I mean, that's like kind of generically true.
I agree with the second part for sure.
Yeah. Palpidur, question for Wargamer Girl. Which League of Voltan would you field and why? The hell is League of Voltan? Am I about to go down the weird Google? Oh, for 40K leagues? Oh, dude. I just play my Imperial Guard, and the only tournament I've been in is the team tournaments for the new League of Voltan. I don't care about the new League of Voltan. Yeah, they do look pretty cool.
The
Hecaton Land Fortress.
That's cool.
Othar the Destined. He looks pretty cool. The Einhir champion. The Brook Iron Master. I like what's going on here. Little robots. The Grimnir. Oh goodness, there's so many. Chthonian, Berserk Mole, Grenade Launcher.
I'm honestly not familiar with this.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I swear these are squats. Is that what I'm looking at?
Leagues of Voltan.
Is that the new squat release?
I don't know. I'll find out. Maybe someone will answer. Loud voices speak early and often. Yeah, and that's where game companies should probably, and that's where it goes for anybody, any company, right? Because you have a fan base, and you'll always have loud voices, and you don't know if that's a loud minority or somebody voicing a concern of a lot of people, but being one of the few that actually speak up. Because it's a big part of like consumer sales is there are lots of people who just walk away and they won't buy your product. And whatever complaint they had was really just like, they may not even articulate it in their mind. They don't like it. So you do need to listen to player feedback, but any company with an IP also needs to have sort of like a telos or rules or whatever of our lore is this. This is true to this lore. We won't break it just because of these complaints, unless there's like something weirdly egregious.
By the way, it looks like it's been confirmed in chat that that's the new squat armies.
Why is everyone with squats? They're fine, I guess.
The art form looks cool. Like, I like those models.
Yeah,
those actually look
but
really
all
neat.
the models look super cool.
Some are a little cooler. Squats are cooler than some of the others. I like these a lot. These guys are neat.
All right, well, Tommy is all about the squats, apparently. So you like the League of Voltan? All their cool-looking dudes.
I really dig that land fortress. That thing's cool.
Dave, I think we on Bolt Action 2nd edition, or maybe a revised edition of the 1st, can't remember, they don't change much. See, Miranda, this is the kind of episode you need MJ on to pontificate. I have you here pontificating right now. Let's see, Andrew, I hated 9th edition 40K when it came out, but I love the codex changes, layout, commitment to fluff. Well, as an Imperial Guard player who still doesn't have my 9th edition codex, I can say that it's a really tough game, although the FAQ is sort of like finally, they're like, okay, you get this much. Which I still haven't had a chance to play. I've been practicing with Ultramarines lately. Mind you, I'm garbage at them. Oh my gosh, but ho-hum. Todd, can't go wrong with Star Wars. The new movies say otherwise.
Fair enough.
Oh gosh, I'm not gonna go into the Star Wars salt, but I mean, as much hate as there is, like there are legitimate complaints, and it's probably also important for a company to remember that just because you're hearing a lot of complaining, maybe not all, some of it may be BS, but not all of it is, and that's going to be up to your leadership to have some idea of what makes sense, what sounds like a real concern. Well, I think that's why you're talking about with your having
creed, I guess.
Yeah,
your
like a philosophy to your game of like, this is what this is about. If you don't like that, then you just don't like whatever this game is about. But if you don't like this, and fixing it really works in favor of the idea of the game, the spirit of the game, whatever, then you can make really positive changes. And I think that's probably the healthiest way because there's rules. We all love rules, right? And so if they fit within that, then now you have like a reasonable framework and you actually have a reason for wanting to agree with changing something or not changing something. Let's see, I agree with Dave Dog. The bottom line is you can't please some people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all the time. You can please some people some of the time. Yes. Yeah, and that's the case. But as long as they're complaining, they are invested in your game. I don't play World War II Germans. But to give my... Is there still an argument going on with Bolt Action? People have forgotten how deadly and hard it was to retake Europe. It's not a landslide. Oh no, when you read war history, like it is a fascinating complicated, grisly affair. And again, stuff that should not be summed up in one sentence because it only shows ignorance to do that. Don't do it. War is complicated. Chakaruba bolt action? Bah, disposable heroes is much superior. Disposable heroes. Swamp gobbers will eat you for lunch. Swamp gobbers will. They're no joke. Swamp gobbers, a gatorman, a pharaoh. Oh my gosh, I would hate to run into like a pharaoh's den just out and about on a picnic or something.
I'd be okay running into Carver, though. I like that guy. He seems very level-headed.
Really?
He seems kind of noble. Like, he really wants to lead his people right. It's just, unfortunately, his people are crazy pigmen. He just happens to be.
It's just the curse of being a lot smarter than all the others,
I think
basically.
it is. You know, he's kind of the one-eyed man in the land of the blind sort of thing. But he seems like everything I've read with Lord Carver seems like he seems legit. Like he seems really cool, actually.
Fair enough. Paul, I don't like this season stuff with Kill Team. My GW would just run the current version in the store, which they would. So there's the core rules and the seasons rules. In 3 months, new seasons rules and box to buy. See, if it's 3 months, like that is a very, 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 very fast turnover for a game. Like, I don't even know how you'd keep up with that and have a job, you know?
I was gonna say, I feel like by the time we got the rule book and like painted up some models and played a test game, it'd be all right, on to the next season.
Did they like min-max some sort of like, okay, we know that people are really in the swing of it by 3 months and that's when they'll change it on. That just seems mean. I don't know. I don't know what their focus groups look like, but you know they've studied it. Damn, I thought it was only Tuesday. Hi, Jeremy. Let's see. Andrew, yes, but you'll never likely play basketball at a professional level, unlike 40K, where you just have to get tickets before the con sells out. Yeah, I mean, and I guess you just end up in the different brackets. Is that what you meant? Let's see, Dave. Paul, for the new Kill Team rules, what combo of 3 rule books are you going to buy and why? Core rule book, compendium book, annual 2022, and now the chapter approved is going to a 6-month release, which honestly does kind of make sense just to get the stuff updated a little faster, but I don't know. You know they're not going to make it cheaper. Patrick, what would have been the difference waiting until this time next year to announce a new edition when they stockpiled for starters? I made peace with removing old models. I'm glad I don't have to. I don't know what their like business situation is, like maybe.
Well, I think they kind of announced that they're doing a new edition, but because they started selling some of the new starter boxes at Gen Con, right? That it feels like that was their new edition release, even though it's like, no, this was just a sneak peek and we're just giving you guys stuff. But I think a lot of people really took that to mean that was the release,
so it
or at
comes
least
off
it
really
felt like it.
Wimpy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think something spectacular has to happen for the end of the year, like a serious marketing drive. Let's see. Wait for new codexes. Let's be honest, they are oh yes. Let's see. Of the new Kill Team, I bought the core books on release, played about 5 times, hated it, never played since. I liked the first edition of Kill Team, and then I didn't really, and I think it's just a taste thing. It seemed really unnecessary for the new edition of Kill Team to come out with little widgets that were just pre-measured markers for 2 and 3 inches and stuff. Like, that seemed very gimmicky to me.
Yeah.
And I don't, as a War Machine player, this might sound really ironic, but I actually really hate clutter. I hate like a bunch of stupid accessories to have to deal with. So, especially stuff you can just lose. So it came off to me as like very gimmicky, and if it feels that way to me, it can put me off a game.
I also like to have the game be at least halfway toward the mother game, I guess, you know, like where it should feel at least halfway like you're playing 40K.
You know, I was feeling that way until we played that 500-point game the other day. 500-point 40K is terrible. It's just so brutal. Like,
well, but that's what the Kill Team rules would be. You know what I mean? Is they would streamline it and make it where that was balanced.
Smaller point. And yeah.
But like the core way you play it would still feel like you're playing 40K. Whereas it seems like the new Kill Team just feels like you're playing radically different game.
It seems significantly different, and I don't care for that because, again, like, how many rule sets do you want to learn? And I don't know, maybe that's like another complainy thing, right? Like, oh man, do I have to learn this whole new thing? New edition? Am I gonna have to relearn all this stuff that I've been storing in my head for years and years? I've paid to put this knowledge there. Now I have to pay to change it. I don't know, maybe there's that. Let's see. Like Cthulhu Pandemic, there you go. You need a deep one with a top hat. Ooh. Speaking of beautiful models, let's see. Andrew, my favorite part of the original Ravnica trilogy, Magic TG, was when the cult sacrificed to bring their demon lord, and he immediately fought the giant science experiment. Oh my.
Double check, make sure that it's focused on it.
We've got it focused on your star child.
He was in Kiss, right?
Doing great. No. Let's see. Yep. I hate the new Kill Team version too. Not for me. Yeah, Paul was over that one. Night, man. Have a good night. Let's see. I heard that GW are only doing intro games on their tables, and that's policy. Well, yeah, because once they've got you hooked, you get the little baggie and they got you hooked, then you go on. Like, you self-perpetuate from there. They need the new blood constantly, and it's, as horrible as it sounds, because they probably aren't terribly kind to other players that just want to come in and play games, it works. So until that stops working, there's no way that's going to change. It depends on foot traffic in the store. Mine has a specific intro table and general gaming, but for general, it has to be the most current version of the game only.
It was the first time I learned about that, by the way, was when we were talking to Joey Berry.
Oh, yeah.
And she was describing, like, that you have game clubs in England, or in like Europe, typically.
Yeah, actually, go pay to play.
Whereas in America, well, you have like the GW store or something. You don't really play there. Then you have a game club where everyone sort of pays their dues and they have this like rented out space. Whereas
cool.
Most American game stores just have tables. Like, you just wander in, play a game, and leave if you want.
Well, in California, it was a little different. You rented tables, but they were like $5.
In some of the stores, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool because there would be like these two-story stores, I guess. Where the upper level is where all the gaming was and such. But yeah, for the most part, especially probably more Midwest, you just have big areas, and space isn't as much of a commodity because we're a huge country, and so people can have tables out and just let people come in and play.
I know here in New Mexico, Utah, Denver, Texas, Oklahoma, like those places, you just wander in. Like, the game stores usually have plenty of tables.
They might have like a dedicated room you could rent, which is probably more for like if you want to do a D&D session.
Yeah.
And that's more if you want privacy. Heck, Domino's has those, which I learned. So yeah, Jeremy, everyone up here thinks Mount Rainier is about to erupt. Now I'm just praying for it to happen. Oh my. It's unlikely. People are so in love with disaster and then disappointed at the reality of how that actually happens. Let's see, depends.
Is that the same one where, like, years ago some guy drug a bunch of tires up there and lit them on fire to make them smoke and freaked everyone out in the nearby town?
Wow. I did not know that.
It sounds like something, that would happen fairly often, actually.
You definitely see that happening in New Mexico. Right now we just have a lot of people who don't have homes setting things on fire in the city. Arson has become an actual significant problem here in Albuquerque.
Because, we didn't have enough of those.
Yeah. Let's see, a smaller store in the city next to me is far quieter. Guy there will let you play anything GW retail. There you go. Love that glow effect. It's so Halloweenish. Jeremy, dang, didn't realize it was so late already. I have to make a phone call. All right, take care, man. Patrick, by Shadespire feel, I meant the buying an army that's more or less the same for everyone. A box and 2 expansions initially sounds weird. I'm hoping it looks more than that. I just bought this army. Well, in the new Primecast, I did mention that people had already seen some of the cadres, so that might end up in some of the stuff people have already bought. Patrick, I have a fear that Riot Quest died with Hungerford leaving. Undercity would have sold way more if they had said the models would be tourney legal at the start. Ugh. I'm so sick of all the models like feeding. I mean, I get it, but...
Well, wait a minute. Undercity, those were all just basic models. I mean, it's... what are those guys?
They were the Black River regulars. So Colby Sterling and Illish and some others, but...
Yeah, but that's like five or six
it's not a
dudes.
lot. Yeah, it would be weird to...
But then all the other models, you have almost an entire... what do you call that guy? That faction. The Cenobite faction.
Oh, Cephalix?
Cephalix, yeah. It was like almost a half a Cephalix army in that box, and those are absolutely usable.
Yeah.
But I agree, like you should definitely create board games where the models in them are just openly like, oh yeah, this helps you get into the game. Like,
yeah, it gives people a
smart.
reason to buy it. It all feeds into that same thing. Again, as long as you can avoid model bloat. Let's see, I'm also hoping there's enough stuff ready for Mark IV by the time Valhalla comes around, though playing 3.5 version wouldn't be so bad. Yeah, I expect there will be a lot of test games of that. Downtown Blunder. Hey all, and hosts.
Down Under Blunder.
Down Under Blunder. Oh, what did I say?
Downtown.
Sorry. How are we all? Starting to work on my 3K Warhammer Fantasy Dark Elves army. Oh, nice. Andragora, hi! I just saw your announcement on Facebook. Starting in 20 minutes, 1 hour ago. Patrick, I have a question for Flo. What army do you think you're most looking forward to painting? Would you use new paint schemes for your armies you've already painted differently?
You mean for like War Machine?
I think
the
the
stuff
stuff
you're
you're painting for Valhalla.
Yeah.
think.
Well,
I was gonna say, well, like as far as armies, like, are we talking about armies specifically for War Machine? Because I mean, that's a very broad.
it doesn't have just what army in general. So, I mean, I know you've got Harlequins like in the
Yeah, for 40K, I've got my own set of Harlequins that I'm going to be painting. My favorite thing to paint in War Machine is
Grimkin.
Yeah, because I'm all about horror.
Yeah.
Horror is my favorite.
Well, you might like the Cephalix.
I do like them,
Cephalix are
but
pretty cool.
Grimkin
They're
are
a
most
much
fun
simpler.
to paint.
Yeah, the Grimkin have
Grimkin
way
are more
more
Halloween.
whimsy. Yeah, there's a lot more whimsy to them. Your dog, are you down with Warhammer Fantasy Battle 9th edition, or are you an Age of Sigmar target player and going for the Cities of Sigmar battle tome for your Dark Elves? Did PP promise your models could always be used, or that the balance would always be on point? It was clearly not when Scorn went below Merc's minions to start MK3. They did promise that the models would always be usable. They never always promised balance, although I think they always earnestly tried to balance it because the competitive nature of the game was such it was like the thing they held in the most esteem of the game.
I think they promised that factions would be balanced, or not promised, but they always
strive
that
it.
factions would be balanced, but not necessarily just individual models would be, because there were a lot of stinkers.
That guy who has a basement full of D&D terrain and a video link has been running a campaign for 27 plus years. I wonder what D&D edition he's using now. It's like a D&D, just same version.
Oh, I think I saw that guy, actually. I think I saw, there's like an interview with him or a little documentary. I think I know what he's talking about. I think I remember that guy because he's just been running the same campaign. He's got like dozens of different players that are running different groups.
Oh my
and what one does will affect what other ones do. And he's got this whole thing, but he's been doing it for, like 27 plus years. He's been doing it for a long time.
Whoa.
It's actually pretty crazy. It's impressive.
That is impressive. I wonder if you get like a Guinness World Record for like longest D&D game campaign.
Longest D&D campaign. Longest, oldest D&D character, surviving character.
Yeah, there you go. Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition, S2, loved it. Patrick, what Tommy was saying about the editions, that's what I was saying about earlier. New RPG editions are whatever. War games, other players can decide to only play the new stuff. Yes. Let's see, Armies, Project with Friends. Huh? Warhammer Armies, Project with Friends. and also 6th edition. Okay, interesting. I play 3rd edition and 8th Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Long-time listener, first-time caller, Stream Legion. Hello, Josh Potter. Welcome, welcome. Down Under a Blender. I also finished painting all my D&D minis for the next session on Saturday. Ooh, good on you, man. Mandragora, in big news, I have finished with my current knights. Nothing to do until a box with the new Chaos War Dogs. Pick on Facebook as usual. Oh, nice. Chaos War Dogs. Did we see those at the game store the other day? Didn't we?
Yeah, someone was playing some War Dogs.
They were like the Armiger size?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Let's see, Paul, I didn't even know Vampire the Masquerade was tabletop. I'd only watched Salty LT play the video game on Twitch. Oh, honey.
They were in the game store creating their characters, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. They were. But, I mean, it was a big thing in the 90s in Albuquerque, I think.
Oh my gosh, it was all over the place out here.
Let's see. Those are squats out, yes. Can't believe there are only 43 people. Should be pulling Uncle Adam numbers. Well, I need to find more of Uncle Adam's topics. He's got that voice. I need to work on my deeper voice. Maybe I should start smoking.
Your smooth, silky Adam voice.
See, Paul, Vampire...
Just need to grow a beard.
That's probably it.
That would just... I don't even have a response. I can't believe, let's see, Paul, Vampire should be having a new video game come out as well. Technically 2, an action one focusing on werewolves, and one very similar to the old VTM Bloodlines. My goodness. I played Vampire the Masquerade back in high school, all the way back in the mid-90s. I believe it's older than that. But it was like kind of in a heyday in the 90s.
It was in the early 90s. Like,
Was it?
it was
Okay.
relatively new. I worked at a place called Wargamers West in 94 or 95, I think. And it was pretty new at that time.
Okay, there you go. Jay Alex, I played Vampire the Masquerade as tabletop in high school, circa 96, 98. It was fairly new at the time. The video game came out a few years later. See, Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt just came out in April. It's a multiplayer deathmatch game. That's so weird. I had no idea.
I was gonna say, like I said, I've seen boxes for it. It always looks cool. The box art is always really cool, but
Yeah.
no.
I only ever knew it as a LARP, really. But
Yeah, I didn't know there was a tabletop. Huh.
Paul, let's see, catching up at 1.5 speed, it's great how it's a hobby, not an investment, versus people do not want to get invested in the setting. Arguments get made. Okay. People don't want to get invested in the settings. I don't know, if you're buying into an RPG or a war game, it seems to me like the setting probably is why you're starting it. And usually, like, you want to get invested into it, right? I mean, if you are going to spend the money to get into a game and presumably like the setting, of course you'd want to get invested in it. And that's when you get invested in it, and then when things change, you complain about it because you liked what it was before. Or you are excited about the new change, and they do something really cool with it, and you're really happy. Or they do something terrible in the new change, and then you're really gun-shy about any new changes that happen. I think that's literally just the cycle.
I will say when Doug Seacat was kind of running the lore, like, I was always very excited to see what was around the corner, like to see what he was doing next.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
I was always
that's
on
true.
board with, well,
You
what's
can-
happening now?
You can definitely have some superheroes within a game company that really, like celebrities, I
That guy's
guess.
great. Like, he is such a good lore master.
He made amazing stuff. Let's see, min-max or min-wax? One is cheese and the other is thick polyurethane coating. Overpriced polyurethane coating, thank you very much. Min-max, as in, you're citing your minimum points investment for your maximum output, and that's when you get all the net lists and the unfun gaming experiences. Let's see, Patrick, I certainly took it as a release knowing full well it wasn't supposed to be. I've seen videos from people who have thousands of followers who never make War Machine vids discuss how the new edition is. That's true. I was seeing that too. I mean, I was seeing a lot of talk and chatter about it, so there is that. But those content creators are the only ones kind of getting that word out there. There's not a lot of information out to new players or to people who aren't following.
But I see what he's saying. I think they are misrepresenting what the word is they're getting out there. They're saying this is the new release instead of we're looking forward to when the new release comes out.
Yeah, like the website should probably have some big countdown or something. Yeah. And, you know, see what people are tweeting about. Here's the beta rules here, but countdown to X. Like, I agree. You're right. Andrew, yes, I too hate the new kill team. Uses a universal set of symbols instead of something more complicated, like numbers. Well, now it's just a cipher. Oh, this symbol means 3. Oh, this symbol means 2. Like, what's the benefit of that?
They only have to manufacture one ruler for, I don't know, different languages maybe? I don't know.
I guess I hadn't considered
different regions? I mean, if that's the reason, that's terrible.
Yeah. Spaztech, GW is milking kill team players for every dime they can get. Box set after box set. I always enjoy the conversations and live broadcasts on your channel. Oh, thanks. Even though I only play historicals, many gaming concepts as well as painting techniques are shared across all tabletop genres. That's very true. That's why I enjoy having like an excellent painter, getting her creatures worked out. And
So
getting...
we add 6 to the count now.
Another 6 just in the time we've been streaming. Lord, woman. Yes. But I also like that we get the feedback from the actual community members hanging out in here, talking about their thoughts on this particular topic. And I don't know. I mean, I know it's a relatively small group, but getting to actually talk about, I don't know, things that people get accused of. Oh, you just want to complain. You just complain for the sake of complaining. It's like, well, do you? Because I don't like the idea of being accused of that. Like, I would like to think that I have very legitimate reasons if I'm going to complain. But there's also probably a way to do it. Like, there's the idea of, what?
I was like,
The idea of constructively complaining versus just being a downer of, oh, they'll screw it up. Like, I don't know that that's helpful. So from a complaining standpoint, oh, they'll screw it up is a throwaway conclusion.
I actually like to listen to a lot of complainers as long as they have, like, this is specifically what I'm worried about. This is something specifically I think they're going to screw up. And you're like, oh, okay. And it's, you know, it's constructive at that point. Whereas just, no, I don't know, they're going to mess it up.
Well, the key right there is articulating it at all. And once you have to articulate what it is, then generally you're going to get way better answers instead of like, oh, they'll just screw it up like they always do. That is a useless statement. It doesn't help anybody. And it's probably like not even thought out. It's such a low resolution thought of what's actually happening. So if you have players who are really invested and they're like, dude, these movement shenanigans are going to be completely crazy, or this one faction like completely negates all the abilities of these other groups. Like, how are you supposed to deal with that?
Or what? They're putting pre-measuring in. I feel like that's a problem.
Yeah, I did get an awful lot of hate for that.
I'm with you. I think games should not pre-measure. I think that's
Some
the fog
games
of
can
war.
pre-measure. That's fine. It just doesn't
they're
make
called
sense
board games where they have squares that you move around on.
Yes, I still have my controversial opinion that I don't really think like pre-measuring helps a war game, but apparently that just makes me like
Mean.
Meanie head me. Let's see. But yes, thank you, Joe. I agree. I like having these topics across all spectrums, especially since a lot of you guys are coming in internationally, and so you have representation and talk about your own metas and your own experience and problems that I don't really deal with here. Getting product to Australia, what supply chains are like in the UK or Europe, and like the other issues that are going on that may affect you being able to go to game stores. Like all of that plays into how much a war game is going to, or any IP is going to survive. And see, Patrick, there's another good question. We like to lament new additions, but what about games going full dodo, like Guild Ball? People would rather have a new addition than the game ending forever. What stopped the game from being played, I guess?
Well, I guess the idea of the company not supporting it, so maybe miniatures are hard to get after a while, or
I mean, people
know,
still
even-
clamor for Cthulhu Wars, as far as I can tell. Like, it's kind of hard to find.
It's kind of niche, though. I mean, you don't see it. It's not like we go to the game store and it's like, oh, look, there's 2 tables of 40K and 2 tables of Cthulhu Wars. Like,
That's true.
you know, it is, and
I
it is
can
more of a
change that.
board game. Whereas I know I see what he's saying, you know, but at the same time, I also kind of enjoy the community of people who play Advanced Hero Quest still. just something I want to get my own set of.
There is that.
But yeah, I mean, I understand because there's also the perceived idea of like, oh well, this game's dead, and then a lot of people walk away from it, and suddenly your player base that
That's
you
a
go to
very
a
good
local game
example
store,
for
you
you.
just can't find people that play it anymore.
Yeah.
And more people are like, oh yeah, I sold my army. And you're like, oh well, that's one less person I can play against. And so yeah, I mean, games going full Dodo, like I understand.
Yeah, that definitely does seem like that would be a problem. And it also,
like Aaron playing Chronopia.
we did find him some miniatures recently. Recently, I mean this year sometime, I don't remember. Just mailed him a package. Here. Yeah. I guess it depends on the reason. Like, you could feel bad if there was a game company that comes out full bore, here's this awesome game, everybody gets super excited, and they're like, okay, we're done, bye. And you don't know if you didn't just get, like, taken in a way. Like, that might feel bad. But maybe it's also, like, just a cultural zeitgeist, too, where people are just really excited about it for a little while, and then its time in the sun is over, and keeping it alive wouldn't have benefit. I mean, there's something to be said for that, I would argue. I mean, it's probably really hard to stay competitive with all the other war games we have these days. Just again, everybody wants a piece of the pie. Bills, I belong to a wargaming club. When we get together, members usually bring games with enough minis for groups of people to play. We usually meet at the club 4 times a year. That is lovely. I love that. That's actually part of what we try to do with Valhalla too. Like, everybody's coming in, they're bringing their own armies, but then you have some people who attend who really want to show off a game that they really love. War Budgies made a point to really push Warcaster last year and got a bunch of people to play demos, and they really enjoyed it. And
He
then
also was flagshipping the Fallout.
yes, and he was super all in on Fallout. Got a bunch of people excited about that because excitement is contagious too. I mean, as much as people might complain, and that's a different thing. There is the unbridled excitement of like, oh my god, this is the most fun you're gonna have. Like, check this out. I love this game, and I really want you to see what it is I love about this game. If anybody remembered Warhammer Online, like the guy that they had promoting that game got me so excited. We don't have to talk about the game itself, but like the guy who was really promoting it had all this excitement and was so excited to explain all of the little details of what each of your different types of classes and character classes can do. And it just was very contagious. So there's a lot to be said for that. And
I
so
do think we're going to be missing a lot by not having War Budgies at Valhalla
I know,
this year.
I'm so
Like,
sad.
that's-
But we do have some other folks coming in that are
Yeah,
gonna
no,
help, so.
not to take away from the other folks at all.
Yeah.
It's just, he's always a joy to have there because he's always bringing something in.
He's good vibes, for sure. Definitely recommend having War Budgies at your party. But in general, just having a gaming club getting together, especially like quarterly like that, because then everyone can kind of prepare, and they're bringing the thing they're excited about, and then they're going to learn about the thing you're excited about. Like, that sounds like such an absolute joy of an event to go to. Let's see, Plunder. I'm ready to take my game to the local stores and run demos and promote it. Heck yeah, dude. Let's see, Armies for War Machine. Armies for War Machine. Do you think they come out with new stuff for limited factions? It'll be the fastest way to harbor ill will by not releasing stuff every once in a while for them. Yes, but if all of the current Grimkin are usable in the new edition, they're going to need to catch up by, making things right with obviously the Hordes factions and
Ios most of all.
well, I mean, Duskhouse is on the way. I mean, that is what's coming out after.
So they're creating new models for the existing factions that already have model bloat. So I feel like they're just going to keep making new models.
We'll see. Time will tell.
I feel like
I'm
Grimkin's
cautiously
definitely
optimistic. I want this to go well. I want my game back. Let's see, Matthew. I love the new Signar army models. I'm definitely going to pick up some of those. to paint, even if I don't actually get around to playing. Well, I hope that the game stores are able to like start carrying them and running some demos. See, it just came from Advanced Maneuvers stream. It's going on this thread. I'm talking about complaining.
You know.
The pros, the cons. It's complicated. We're also kind of over time, so we're actually wrapping up. Let me see if I can kind of rush through some of the rest of the comments. Let's see, I've seen that. He has crazy cool room table and impressive backlog of lore. Someday I'll have a game running that long. Oh gosh, it's the D&D dude. The D&D dude is running what is commonly known as West Marches style game. Interesting concept. Do you folks have a Discord channel? No, terrible at Discord. I know I need to get better at it. I want to make a channel. I'm still figuring out my Valhalla Discord, so once I get the hang of that, then I am thinking of making
one. I'll help you run it.
Okay, sweet. I've got a moderator already, and Paul is good at everything. So let's see. Bills, in October, I will be going to Traveler Con, where any and every version of Traveler RPGs may be played. No edition wars. Woo, fun. Google D&D guy. In 2021, Robert Wardhouse's campaign will be running for 39 years, which makes it quite possibly the longest D&D campaign of all time.
Yeah, that's the guy I saw.
Oh my gosh! Let's see.
He didn't even have his wife, and now, like, when he started, but now his, like, children help him run it because they're adults. Like, it's
Dang.
crazy.
Bless his wife. That's a lot of investment. See, I think the art was a huge part of why I got into War Machine. Oh, same. It has such beautiful art. Or has such beautiful art still. Let's see. Change I don't mind so much, but when a game almost completely changes, that's when I have an issue. Kill Team's a mess. Yeah, we were hearing about the Kill Team stuff earlier. Meanie Pants hating on pre-measuring. Yep, that's me. I don't usually disagree with Tommy, but pre-measuring was and is a must to get new players. No. Plus there's...
like, immediately you're like, no.
I don't know.
Well, it's
I mean,
like it was. It's almost like new players showed up to play war games for decades before pre-measuring showed up.
Yeah, and it doesn't speak kindly to new players, like intelligence, when you're like, well, you need pre-measuring because you're not going to be able to work this out. Like, that doesn't seem like the thing, especially when it's like, oh, here's the rule book. Now memorize all of these rules interactions. It'll be fine. You're like, that's not exclusionary. So I kind of have a little bit of a hostile take on that. But I respect your opinion, Patrick, even though it's wrong. Josh, if your soldiers are of a sufficient tech level to have reliable range finding, laser, radio wave, then pre-measuring makes sense. If it's a setting that relies on Mark I human eyeball, then no pre-measuring. Well, yeah, and there's that. And 40K has super unreliable technology, so that does make sense. And War Machine is like, what, Civil War, or like Revolutionary War era?
Roughly French Revolution era.
So yeah, it's also not going to be hyper accurate.
The other argument for the range of a weapon, like, you can fire a bullet like a mile, you know, if you just angle it up enough. And it's not really the range of the weapon, it's the effective range of how you're able to shoot the weapon. And so there's no rangefinder that's going to, like Space Marines, you know, I'm sure they have rangefinders and all that stuff, but it's like, yeah, but what range are they effectively able to fire the weapon under combat situations?
Well,
that's kind of more what it represents, I think. More
and a certain level of chaos that war has, that if you take it out of it, really, if you take that out of a game, I don't know how much you can still call it a war game versus just a board game or some other type of game, which I guess is more my issue with it.
Well, like fog of war and psychology rules and things like that, I think go a long way to making it feel like a war or a battle, you know.
Let's see. That happened with Guild Ball. The day after they put all the models on sale, I'm missing 3 out of 150. Let's see. In addition to going full Dota, what if PP had said War Machine is dead? We're no longer supporting it. It's all Warcaster time now. I think they'd be at the end of it.
I can't tell if they thought they were going to do that or something. I don't know. With the way the lore went, we're just half the population of Western Emerald ran into a portal that was going to become Warcaster. It really seemed like they were wanting that to be the case, but I don't know.
The other sad thing about Guild Ball was that there was still 4 minor teams that never got launched. I understand why they quit. They were putting an effort into little profit versus new things that earn more. Oh yeah, if the marketing, if the business model wasn't really working out, then you know your time as a creator is supposed to be worth something if people are willing to pay for it. And so if you do find yourself putting in a lot of time without any reward, then yeah, maybe your own life force can be used towards something else. Guild Ball seemed to be gaining momentum and is a real contender for Blood Bowl. It makes me concerned for the veracity of other Steam-forged products. Well, and then there is that. So then, like, oh, they put out something new. Do you trust it? Matthew, I don't get why people dislike new editions and new models. I like getting new models, and honestly, I'm not that bothered by my old models not being current. What do you do with your old models, just out of curiosity? And we'll probably have to bail here. Night, Jay, Alex.
I think part of it might also be monetary-wise. Like, yes, we all spend the money on it anyways, but it is, like, just having to spend money on models that you already had, but now those versions of them aren't good. So now you have to go buy these other versions of them. And you already invested your time, and you already invested the money, and yeah, I mean,
I don't know. People
I can understand
buy
that.
a lot of resculpts, though, I think.
By the way, Flo.
Nowadays, they just 3D print them.
By the way, Satan says hello.
Hello! I got Satan in the chat. Let's see, there are rangefinders for golf. I'm sure Space Marines have accurate rangefinders. I doubt that. Let's see, I intend to only have pre-measuring.
But the real question is,
controllers.
do you play golf under combat situations? Because my real question is, do hockey sticks have rangefinders on them? Because golf, you have all the time to sit there and get
chill.
ready.
That's true. The different environments can definitely change that.
Like those boot camp simulated war situations, like there should be golf tournaments where you play with that. Then that's a strong argument.
All right, I think we can call it here. Thank you all for everyone who participated in the chat and the conversation. I think I learned some things here, and I hope you did too. And I mean, at the end of the day, complaining, is it good, is it bad? It's what it is. Why are you doing it is always more important than just what it is you're doing. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 more weeks. In the meantime, I'm going to see what stuff I can get painted up, and probably watch Paul play some more of his creepy mortuary assistant game, although Phasma has an update coming out this month.
All the things. I totally have time for all the things, right?
Bye, guys. Say bye, guys.
Bye.